Hello everyone, and welcome to the 7th lesson in my 3D modeling for 3D printing course. And we're actually near the end. And Work on the horns that I did from the last lesson is coming along, and I am going to make a separate video for that. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested. But yeah, I just wanted to do a quick lesson today, and today we're going to talk about measurements. So, how do you know how big whatever you design is going to be when you physically print it out? Well, I don't know if you remember, but I mentioned in a previous lesson that this starter cube is 2 millimeters, like cubed, right? So 2 millimeters each way, each direction. And it is the same actually for um, the cylinder as well. So if you line this up in front of you, you can see that it takes up 2 uh, millimeters. Now you can zoom in and there's like the, but you can see the little outline, and that means it's 2 millimeters. Okay, so so let's get rid of this and just work with the cylinder real quick. Okay, so from here we kind of have to do a little math. Um, so what we know is this is 2 millimeters high, wide, and tall. High, wide, and long. Right? So let's say we wanted to make, I'm into miniatures. So let's say you wanted to make like a 25 millimeter base for your miniature. Okay, 25. So if this is 2, we can actually scale this by 0.5, and then it'll be 1 millimeter. You see how that works? This is probably the simpler way, and then we could scale it on the X by 25, which is going to make it look really weird, but stay with me. And then we're going to scale it on the Y by 25. So now we have this little disc, which is 25 millimeters long and wide. And right now it's only at 1 millimeter thick. And you could print this out, no problem. And it wouldn't take a long time, but yeah. Let's actually export this. We're going to export it as 25 millimeter base. Okay. And the program that I use for FDM printing is Ultimaker Cura, which I'm booting up. The version is 4.12.1. I'm pretty sure that's not the latest version, but they're updating these things all the time, and this version works pretty fine for me, so I don't want to update unless they force me to. Okay. And then to upload that file we just made, we're going to go here, and then you just find the file, put under testing, and then 25 millimeter base. And then that's what it looks like. And I don't know if you know how big an Ender 3 Pro is, but that's about right. And then if we slice it, it'll it says it'll take 5 minutes. So, and then if we preview it, it shows us a little preview of all the layers, which is not many. It's 5 layers. And then if we go down, yep, doesn't even change much. Yeah, you can save to disk, put it on a micro SD card, put it in your Ender 3, and you will be good to go. Okay, delete. Let's look at another example. Um, Lately, I have been kind of obsessed with the idea of making my own like dungeon tiles. Um, and instead of 25 millimeter, I want to make it 30 because my miniatures have weapons and sometimes 25 millimeter is too small. If you know the company Dungeons and Lasers, they actually first started with 25 millimeter and then they switched to 30 because uh, of the same reason, so that there is enough space for your miniatures and their weapons, I guess. So right now, I'm just gonna show you real quick what I do to kind of make this into kind of like a proto dungeon tile. I haven't really put that much thought into it, but I did make a base one, and I'm just gonna show you how I did it. Okay, so right now this is the basic cube, which is 2 millimeters, and we're gonna leave it at that and just do the calculations. So for 30 millimeters, we're gonna um, scale it on the x by 15, because 2 times 15 is 30. And then we're going to scale it on the y by 15. Now this is 130 by 30 millimeter tile. And they usually have 4 squares to a tile, so we actually need to square this again by 2 on the x. Uh, did I say square it? Scale it on the x by 2, and then scale it on the y by 2. So now we have this, what is it, 660? What is it, 60 by 60 tile? So that we can put 30 by 30 tiles in each of the 4 spaces. Okay. Also, I'm just going to do this real quick, and this is a good habit to do. Always apply your transformations, and that way it won't be messed up later when you're trying to like sculpt it or whatever. And then, yeah, we'll just do that so that the origin's in the middle. Okay, and then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add another cube. But this one, we want it to be, let's see. So we want to leave 2 millimeters in the middle and 1 millimeter on the side so that when they're side by side, there's 2 millimeter gaps in between each tile. Does that make sense? So we want this to be 28 millimeters. So we're going to scale this on the x by 14, scale it on the y by 14, and then we have our 28 millimeter square. And then we're just going to put that right there. And then we're going to go to side view and then move that over. And then line it up right there. And then now we can duplicate this and just, line it up wherever. But I'm just going to show you a trick real quick. So we know that this is centered because we set origin to center mass. So all we're going to do is take this, apply the mirror modifier on the x, and put this as our object. And then now we have this other tile, and as you can see, there's perfectly 2 millimeters in the middle and 1 millimeter at the end. And then if we look at this from the side view, as you can see, they both take up the exact same spot. So that works for us, okay? And then what we're gonna do is, yeah, and then what we could do after that is mirror it again, but this time mirrored it on the y, and that didn't, oh, there we go. Okay, so now when we look at it, as you can see, if you look at it from the side, from the front, or the side, it's the exact same way throughout. So that if you print this out, it will be like a like a perfect dungeon tile. And then just to show you, I kind of know what I'm talking about. So here is the actual tile that I made. As you can see, it's a little fancier. Like I beveled the individual tiles, and I raised it slightly to give it a little more thickness, to give it a little more durability, because this is way too thin, just 2 millimeters. And as you can see, I put these holes. I wanted to magnetize my tiles so that they can click together easily. And I cannot stress this enough that this is just the prototype. Um, the finished product, if I ever get to it, like the individual spaces will have some kind of texture, like whether it be wood or stone or whatever, right? And the last thing that I implemented um, is I beveled the bottom a little bit, like so. And that is because when you FDM print, there's this thing that can happen where the first layer kind of squishes against the build plate, right? Because the Ender 3 Pro doesn't have auto leveling, so I need to manually level the bed myself. And for me, I always make sure that the first layer is kind of squished onto the plate so that it stays on the bed exactly where it needs to be, because as the print is printing, the bed like jiggles side to side. So if it's not on there tight, then it could fall off and your print will be ruined. So what happens is the first layer actually will kind of come out a little bit. They call it an elephant foot. Um, but because I beveled this on the bottom a little bit, that elephant foot shouldn't go past the outside walls. My initial design, I didn't have this, so it actually did the elephant foot, and as you can see here, what I had to do was like kind of sand and shave off that edge, but I was like, that's a lot of work to do that for each tile. So, um, yeah, I improved my design ever so slightly, and now uh, I don't need to do that anymore, and they line up against each other perfectly. And just to kind of prove that, here's one of my tiles next to one of the Dungeons and Lasers tiles, and as you can see, they line up perfectly. So yeah, that is probably gonna be it for today. Hopefully this was somewhat useful. I feel like I didn't really tell you anything, but that's how I measure things out. So your homework for today is to make something simple, maybe something useful. Like, for me, I came up with this tile that could be useful, I don't know. But make it scaled to size. So make it the right size in Blender. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Let's say you just want to make like a 2-inch sword. Um, that shouldn't be too hard to do. Okay? So, yep, that's your homework for today. And I think we will call it here. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.